when you watch that, you have to be able to see how the A National OCGFC are operating, and why Trump is their man. I mean, I've been telling you for 3 years, going on 3 years, that there's a destabilization campaign against Europe. That's what the Ukraine war actually is. It's a proxy war being waged by the United States, not against Russia, but against Europe. I've been telling you that they're turning on each other. The West is turning on itself. I've been telling you that America is going to become more and more interested in creating conflict in the West, not in the global South. I've been telling you that the historical roles of the global North and the global South are going to be reversed. Didn't I tell you that? Well, look at the last Trump press conference. He's talking about destroying Canada economically. He's talking about trying to force them into submission. That's what all this talk is really about. He's talking about making the whole country into an American state, and he's talking about doing the same thing with Greenland. Except with Greenland, he even said that they might use military force to do it. So that's a direct threat against the EU, and they've taken it as such. He's literally saying that America could potentially use military force against a European country in order to seize territory from them. Seize European territory. Well, that's nothing but colonization. What he's talking about with regards to Canada, that's nothing but colonization. The man is talking about occupying, colonizing, and pillaging other Western countries, the resources of other Western countries. He called the border between Canada and the U.S. an artificially drawn line. I mean, Putin didn't even say that about Ukraine. Meanwhile, the border with Mexico, well, that isn't artificial at all. It's just an artificial border between Canada and America. Greenland and Canada get to become American states. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico is called a floating island of garbage at a Trump campaign rally over the summer. So Puerto Rico is trash, and the Mexican border needs a wall, but the border with Canada is just an imaginary line. It doesn't really exist. Now, the obvious racism is just that. It's obvious. But if you think about it a little bit more deeply, there's a reason for drawing a demarcation line like this, what Trump is trying to do. The U.S. empire is looking at subjugating the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere is no longer any of their business. It's out of their sphere of influence. In fact, the southern hemisphere is the ascendant hemisphere. I mean, did you notice how his press conference, how it began? What he did what the real reason for the press conference was. He was talking about the UAE pumping in $20 billion of investment into the United States. I mean, imagine. We're already at this point. We're already at the point where an American president is bragging about successfully attracting foreign direct investment from the global South into America. I mean, this is usually the kind of thing that a president in the global South would be bragging about, you know, being able to attract foreign investment. But now you have the president of the United States, or the president-elect of the United States, being proud and bragging about the UAE opening up data centers in his country. Role reversal. It's actually really interesting to me. It's interesting to watch all of this play out, alhamdulillah, in our lifetime. We're seeing a major change. Basically, the neocons, the nationalistic OCGFC, are being placated. This is what Trump is doing. They're being redirected to feed their cannibalistic appetites on other Anglo-Saxons. I mean, this was the West's primary activity for centuries. Before they ever invaded our lands, they just cannibalized each other. That was the main pastime. So we're coming full circle. I mean, of course, the neocons need to maintain a fantasy of power. And I think that that's partly what's going on with Trump's outlandish suggestion. It's giving them something to dream about while they create nightmares for everyone else. I mean, the suggestion that the United States could just take Canada, take Greenland, it may sound absurd, but it actually reveals something far deeper than just the mere posturing of a braggart. This is in the imperial DNA of the Western power structure, a system that has absolutely thrived on the subjugation of others' lands, others' resources, and other people for centuries. It isn't just about geography. This is about desperation on the part of the West, on the part of America. It's about a crumbling empire that's grasping at fantasies to try to reclaim relevance as its power slips away. To entertain the idea of annexing Canada or annexing Greenland or both in the 21st century is clinging to a mindset that belongs in the colonial past. It's obviously geopolitically absurd to try to do something like this today with all of the alliances and the sovereignties that are at play. But the point isn't whether this is feasible or not. It's that the very notion itself reflects an empire that is incapable of adapting to a world that is no longer defined by its dominance. The United States is not asserting strength here, it's telegraphing fear. This isn't a serious proposal. It's a tantrum dressed up as a strategy. It's the instinct of a predator whose fangs have fallen out, and they're lashing out in vain as his prey slips through its fingers. In my opinion, Trump is giving the neocons a fantasy of America. A fantasy of America as a great, giant imperial landmass like China or the former Soviet Union. A landmass of majority white people. That's important. Because as so-called minorities, or rather as members of the global majority who happen to live in America, as they are increasingly becoming the collective majority of that country, in other words, as white people are gradually becoming the largest minority in America, well, racists in America have a demographic problem, similar to the Zionists. But unlike the Zionists, if America starts annexing territory in the Northern Hemisphere, well, that's territory that has its own kind in it. They have their own kind there. Now, if the Zionists seize territory, well, it's not filled with Jews. In fact, they don't even have enough Jews in the world. There's not even enough Jews on earth to fill the territory that they want, or even the territory that they already have. But if America takes Canada, if America takes Greenland, well, then the white population of the new United States empire would be at least increased by a few percentage points, which matters to them. Maybe more if Canada adopts a mass deportation policy like America. See, it's almost like they're trying to gather all their own kind together and either expel or refuse entry to the so-called racial and so-called ethnic demographic groups of the global majority who they never liked. And that's actually something that the global majority should be happy about, to be honest. The global majority should be happy about that. You should be happy about the anti-immigration policies, frankly. Because they're literally trying to keep you off of a sinking ship, while they're telling everyone else who's stuck on board that ship that it was the weight that was making them sink, not the gaping hole in the side of the vessel. In other words, they're lying to their own people about what's really happening about and why their ship is going down. But they're trying to keep you from jumping from the iceberg onto the Titanic, which is exactly what it is when anyone immigrates from the global south into America or into the West. You're just jumping from the iceberg to the Titanic. And they're trying to keep you off of it with their anti-immigration policies. Now, of course, this new Trumpian manifest destiny is nothing but a daydream. It doesn't really mean anything in reality. Trump is selling hallucinogens to the neocons. And of course, he's also just providing a distraction to the American people. This is one of the main things that politicians do in America. He's providing them a distraction that will appeal to their nationalistic ego and their nationalistic vanity. Anytime America talks about anything outside of America, all they're trying to do is distract their citizens from what's happening in their country, from the inequalities, from the economic collapse, from the erosion of their rights. All of this is happening in their own neighborhoods, so let's look somewhere else. Let's try to make them look somewhere else. It's for the American people to try to keep them looking outwards while their own houses burn down. And I mean that literally. I mean, I don't think you could find, or I don't think you could imagine or come up with a better metaphor for America today than what's happening in California right now. You got tens of billions of dollars worth of damage from those fires in California. Meanwhile, there's no water. The fire extinguishers aren't producing any water. Their firefighting equipment is all gone to Ukraine. Whole neighborhoods in Los Angeles, subhanAllah, whole neighborhoods in Los Angeles look like Gaza today. How about that? And you have a mayor who doesn't even know that a URL, or that the term URL isn't the same thing as a website. This is America. So yes, you pretend that you're going to transform into some huge, expansive geographic empire from the Arctic all the way down to the renamed Gulf of America, just to divert from the reality of your reduction as a world empire. You talk big even though you can't even fill your own boots anymore. And that's why you talk big. Because you're shrinking. Now, no, that doesn't mean that it's all empty talk. It's not completely empty. As I say, the A National OCGFC have a plan. It's what I've been talking about for 3 years. Relations are going to become increasingly hostile between the U.S. and Canada, between the U.S. and Europe. between the U.S. and the rest of the Northern Hemisphere. Everyone is being misled, in my opinion, with regards to thinking that that Trump wants to have problems with China, that he's trying to make problems with China, or that he's confrontation with China. I don't think that's accurate at all. They're going to be making problems for the West. America's going to be making problems for the West, which essentially just delivers the global South to China and to BRICS. MAGA isn't about helping the American people any more than a corporate restructuring is about helping the workers. That's how you can probably conceptualize what's happening in America. America is downsizing. All while, just like with a company, when they downsize, they're telling everyone that they're just consolidating and they're just streamlining, and that everything they're doing is just going to make everything better than it ever was. They're going to make the company stronger than it ever was, and so on. Meanwhile, the richest of the rich in America are perched with their golden parachutes that will float them off into the global South, while your cities crash and burn. This is the death rattle of a system in crisis. Western colonial capitalism, in its current form, is unsustainable, and that's obvious. The U.S. economy has been hollowed out by financialization, by deindustrialization, and it can no longer stand on its own. That's a fact. The system runs on blood. The system runs on turmoil. Canada and Greenland and Europe have had a good run in terms of being able to orbit the United States without ever having gotten sucked into the vortex of that vampiric system. But that good run is over, and they're going to get sucked in. The same system that they used to pillage the global South is turning its sights around. You've heard about those prisons where the inmates rebel and take over the facility. Well, it's kind of like that, I think. The world today is kind of like that. All of your former prisoners, the colonized countries, the so-called developing countries, your former prisoners, have taken over the jail. And now the rifleman in the gun tower is turning his rifle around, because he can see which way the wind is blowing. He can see who's actually in charge now. So now you've got prison guards who are stripping off their uniforms to try to put on the prison blues, because your uniform just makes you a target. I'm talking about the West now. Oh, the tables are turning.